Well, hello, White Sox fans. Welcome to another edition of Future Sox Live. My name is Ian Eskridge. I'm joined tonight by managing editor of FutureSox, James Fox. How you doing, James?
Hey, Ian. How's it going, man?
Going pretty well. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about this week, which is a pleasant change, huh?
Yeah, that was quick. It was quick. So, full disclosure, like waking up my kids from a nap, right? And I have a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I get a text from our buddy Elijah Evans. And this is the first I'd seen of it. And he said, a couple of expletives. Why did they trade Cristian Mena? And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, I need to open up my phone or whatever, like after I get my kids situated. And then it was not one but two trades. So, you know, I saw the first one and then I was like, wait, they didn't trade Mena. And then I saw the second tweet right away. And I was like, okay, now I get it a little bit. And then I had a dinner, so, you know, I just, it was rough timing for me, but, you know, I'm not going to complain too much about two transactions.
Yeah, no, I woke up from a nap, and I saw the news, so that was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, there were so many transactions in the last week since we streamed last, since we talked last, so I'll just go ahead and drop this one out here first. You know, obviously inconsequential because Romy Gonzalez was, when he was DFA'd for John Brebbia getting picked up, Romy Gonzalez has been picked up by the Red Sox, so he is now gone. So we won't have Romy Gonzalez around here to kick around anymore. So I kind of think that that's it could possibly be a good pickup for them. Who knows? I guess we'll find out. If he can stay healthy, I feel like he can be semi-productive in a utility role. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think Romy Gonzalez is a big leaguer. I understand why, you know, a lot of struggles here, fell out of favor quickly, I think, because of like the way he was hyped up last year. But I mean, watching that kid in the minors, I mean, he is a chiseled piece of rock, and you know, that might like be a disservice done to him, right? Because maybe he's hurt a lot, and you know, he's had some rough times, and it's a lot of strikeouts. But look, he can play literally everywhere. And he's got big time power, and look, he's going to K a lot. He can't play that often. Like he's not a guy that should play that much, or he's going to get exposed. But I think he could bounce around and find a spot somewhere. I think he's one of these guys where if he got DFA'd by Boston, he'd be picked up by, you know, he'd be one of those DFA limbo guys, right? Like he'd go from team to team to team and then, you know, hopefully settle in somewhere. But, you know, one of the themes of this show early, like that you and I had talked about, was just, I feel like everybody had joked about all the like fungible space on the White Sox 40-man, like, oh, it shouldn't be that hard to make moves, like all these guys are terrible type thing. And there was some truth to that, right? But we're getting to the point where, I mean, there's some guys that, I mean, anytime a guy's added, you're going to have to DFA somebody. And a lot of these guys are useful pieces, and some of them are on the 40-man because they're prospects and whatever. So, you know, if they make too many more moves, it's going to be interesting to see like which direction they go with who to like remove from the roster, basically.
Yeah, and we'll get to one of those guys that you and I had counted out later as a guy that we could just launch in Alex Speas. And we've got some video coming for you guys later on in the stream as we get into these deals here. But, you know, it's going to be really hard for, you know, when it comes decision time for who they're going to get rid of. Now, personally, my feelings were that Gavin Sheets probably should have been launched before Romy Gonzalez, just simply because even if you discount Romy's bat out of the equation because he did have an absurd strikeout rate around 30%, which I understand why people thought that was a big deal. But the thing is that defensively, he can play almost anywhere except for, I mean, he even has a 0 ERA in the major leagues now. But he can't play catcher, obviously. But, you know, and he's actually a plus defensively pretty much anywhere you put him, as opposed to Gavin Sheets. He's left-handed, but he's not he's truly not a power bat. He's more a bat-to-ball guy, and he plays first base okay, but then they stick him in right field, which is absurd, and we've beat that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I heard you guys on the big league version of this podcast last week kind of talk about Gavin Sheets a little bit. And look, I interviewed Gavin Sheets years ago. I don't know if you know this, like, you know, I was the first one that he told about his move to the outfield, and I wrote a piece for FutureSox. And it like was not planned. I just had like some questions for him in 2020 when he wasn't at the alt site that I was covering, and he kind of like let that out. And me and Mike were like, well, geez, now I should like write this because I'm the only one that has it, right? And look, I applaud him for it, but there's no way that this general manager is going to play him in the outfield. And I've been telling people that for weeks. We haven't got into these players yet, but I think it's well established now. Some of the moves the Sox just made, I mean, they just like Gavin Sheets proof this roster, I feel like. I mean, it's really hard, Ian, because like even if he's on the roster, who are you going to sit for Gavin Sheets to play, right? Because he's not going to play against lefties, right? So if there's a righty on the mound, you'd have to play him over Andrew Vaughn or Eloy Jimenez. And why would you do that? So I don't really see a spot for him. I don't know how they'll nicely do it, if it's just a cutthroat DFA and somebody else gives him a shot, or if they keep him all the way through spring training. Because I think he might have one option. If he does, then it's easy. He's just the first baseman in Charlotte, hitting nukes at that place. But which might be the best outcome, honestly. But I don't know. I don't know if you can keep him on the roster that long.
Yeah, to me, it seems like a foregone conclusion that, with the guys that they've brought in, that he's not going to have any playing time. And it's unfortunate. I've heard he's a fantastic guy, but, we're talking about a Major League Baseball team here, and it's going to be struggling for offense, and so they need to find somebody. So,
well, he's not comfortable playing the way that he needs to play to be a big leaguer. And I've always kind of said it, like even when he was coming through the system, and me and Matt Cassidy would kind of argue about him because he loved the bat to ball skills. And he's like, oh, and I'm like, Matt, like this dude's got to hit 30 homers a year. He's useless. I mean, he's first base only. And if I'm fine with a 25% strikeout rate if you're walking enough and you're going to hit, 25 to 35 bombs from the left side. It's fine, but Gavin Sheets is not really fine playing like that, and I feel like he's been caught in between because of it. And I mean, what did he have? He had like a 61 WRC plus last year. I mean, this isn't, it's just not. It's not enough, obviously.
Yeah, I think Romy had a 63 WRC plus, and also, when you look back at the minor league stats, Romy showed more power ever than Gavin Sheets did. The only time Gavin Sheets really showed any significant power was his junior year at Wake Forest. When you look at that ballpark, when you relate to college ballparks to, park factors, people complain about Wake Forest being a launching pad. So
for sure. And we're going to have the same Nick Kurtz discussion until July. Right, and that it just scares me to death. Like, I hope he goes in the top 4. So that's all I'm going to say right now. We'll have a lot of draft shows later. But,
yeah, so we don't have to talk about it at all. That would be ideal. So first meltdown of the week went when Kevin Pillar was signed by the White Sox to a minor league deal. And, some people didn't see right away that it was a minor league deal, but it is a minor league deal. What do you see in the signing of Kevin Pillar for the organization in total?
Well, I mean, I think it makes more sense now after Saturday, right? I mean, when you see the guys they picked up, I think in Dominic Fletcher, like everybody will get to him, but like if that's Pillar as your fourth outfielder playing sometimes against lefties, like I don't hate it. He's not terrible. He's not good. He's league average against lefties for his career, and now he's older, but like, look, he can still defend. We've talked about the Getz plan here, and that doesn't mean that Chris Getz doesn't understand that they need power hitters but this year they are going to defend. So I think it makes sense. $3 million if he makes the team. It's not my money. I don't care, but look, I mean, even like, what was your alternative, Ian? Like, I heard people complaining like about Kevin Pillar. I'm like, would you rather play Kevin Pillar or Gavin Sheets in right field, like we were just talking about? And they clearly don't want to play Oscar Colas. So yeah, I'm fine with this. I like the group of veteran outfielders in the NRI pile, and some of those guys will be in Charlotte, and some will be released. But I mean, it's like, look. the White Sox don't have enough top end talent, right? That's a huge reason why they're probably going to win 60 some games. But like the depth actually isn't that bad for once. Like I like some of the NRIs and some of the like what they've done to like the back of the 40 man. Like this is kind of some of the stuff I've been clamoring for years.
Yeah, I mean it only took 6-7 years to finally start stockpiling some guys at AAA, and even last year, they had Piscotty there, they had Victor Reyes there. I mean, they had some guys in AAA, but the thing was that we didn't have a right fielder in Chicago, yet those guys sat down there in AAA. So hopefully now we'll see. Obviously, I don't want to see Brett Phillips out there. That is the equivalent to your stereotypical Brewers middle infielder of all glove and no bat. And that's essentially what he is. And I don't, nobody wants to see that. So we'll see what happens in right field. It should be interesting going into spring.
Who's the other, who's the former Cub that they signed that was decent for like half of a season? I could look too. I should know
his name right now off the top of my head.
But like they have him, they have Brett Phillips, they have Pilar. They brought back Mark Payton, who, look, I think will be very popular in the Queen City. I think I think Kevin Pilar has a pretty good chance to make the White Sox club. But, we'll see what else they do. And, I guess they've made that path like a little bit tougher, and we can get into some of those. There it is from Beef knows.
Thanks, Beef.
Rafael Ortega, that's right. So look, I mean, he hits from the left side too. So I don't know what these two trades kind of do for his status, right? I almost feel like Chris Getz got all these NRIs signed and then like waited to make these two trades, like before, so it was kind of like, oh, make sure all these guys sign and then we'll make these trades after, because they might not have signed here like prior to seeing these two guys. But we can get into it if you have nothing further on Kevin Pilar.
Yeah, that was kind of actually one of my thoughts earlier today. When I was sitting here going in my head through all the guys that are minor league guys in AAA, all these outfielders that they signed, and knowing now that you have Dom Fletcher and Zach DeLoach coming, plus they also signed Pilar. Now you've got all these guys, Mark Payton coming back from Japan, and he didn't have a good year last year in Japan. So, it's like, what are we going to, what are those guys going to do? It's just, for certain that some of those guys are going to be looking for a job here in the near future.
Yeah, well, and I do think they have like kind of prospects still now that'll be expected to play every day in Charlotte, right? Like we kind of talked about this off air. I mean, like they're not going to get rid of Oscar Colas. So he's going to be playing right field or center field, like for the Knights. And I would imagine, like I think Dominic Fletcher is going to be on the White Sox. I'm not so sure that Zach DeLoach will be right away. So, I mean, he's in a corner. I think you brought up Cespedes the other day. I mean, I don't know if he has much value, but like he's definitely got to play in Charlotte. So, yeah, I mean, there are some fringy prospects that are still going to be down there too, like in addition to like a lot of these like vet guys. So it'll be interesting. They're not horrible problems to have, right? Like you're usually not able to like squint and fill out the Knights outfield. So this will be a little bit different. It won't be Billy Hamilton playing 100 games in AAA for the White Sox.
Yeah, I'm used to having this issue with first base, but with the outfield, it's foreign territory for me. So I want to get this out of the way now. We've got a question from Chi-Town on YouTube. Says, do you guys still anticipate a Dylan Cease trade, or has Getz set the bar out of reach?
I mean, here's the thing. Like, if they trade him within the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to be surprised because they clearly want to trade him. I don't know how much, like, Scott Boras is holding things up, right? Because I'm not sure it was ever going to be Baltimore anyway. Like, after kind of reading what Bob Nightingale wrote, and for anybody that didn't see Bob Nightingale's notes today, they're usually pretty informative. He kind of said Baltimore was offering the White Sox a similar package to what they traded the Brewers, plus another player. Now, what does that mean? Who knows? But if the other player was one of those big five that we've been talking about, I'm pretty sure that deal happens. So my guess is it's not that. And then I don't really blame Chris Getz for not making this deal. And then look, was he asking for too much? I don't know, maybe, right? But I do still think there's potential for a Yankees, a Cardinals, somebody that just comes out of nowhere that just decides to trade for Dylan Cease, because the White Sox clearly want to trade him. I just don't think they're afraid to have him start opening day and keep him till the deadline, because they feel like they can get at the deadline what they've been offered right now. And then we'll all just have to hold on to our butts and hope that nothing bad happens.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at, because had they traded Cease for the return that the Brewers got for Burns, there would have been a riot. I think that there at least had to be one more big prospect that was close, in like a Heston Kjerstad or something, closer to the major leagues to get that deal done for the White Sox. And
for sure, yeah,
I'm perfectly fine with us staying pat if that was the return that was being offered.
Because they have other guys that I like Dylan Beavers or even like Enrique Bradfield or whatever. Like, you add one of those guys to that package, like it's not terrible, but that's just not enough of one high-end guy, especially when like the top ranked guy is Joey Ortiz. I've had a lot of Orioles fans and bloggers like follow me like the last 8 to 10 weeks on Twitter, and I think most of those guys are pretty reasonable, but they just Joey Ortiz is pretty valuable, but I had no real interest in him as part of like a White Sox package, just because of like, I just feel like you should be able to find middle infielders that do that. And he's 25, and look, I'm sure he'll start for the Brewers and he'll be fine, and he'll put up 3 WAR seasons like because of defense, but I just kind of wanted a little bit more than that in a Dylan Cease trade.
I wholeheartedly agree. So let's go ahead and move on to the first of the 2 trades that happened on Saturday. Gregory Santos sent to the Mariners for Prelander Berroa, Zach DeLoach, and a Comp B pick, which should end up being pick 6'9". And we'll see where that ends up. And do you want to go ahead and explain the Comp B pick before we move into all this other stuff?
Sure, I would love to. I actually don't think it's going to be the 6th. I think it's going to be like pick 66 or 67. So one thing people have to keep in mind is the guys that are still available in free agency: Blake Snell, Bellinger, and Chapman all have qualifying offers. So I guess if a team, like a big market club, signs one of those guys that has to forfeit a second rounder, that pick kind of just like gets forfeited, and then everything moves up. So it has the potential to be like the 66th or 67th pick still, but whatever. Like, that's fine. Like, the gist of it is, yes, they're going to get another top 70 player in theory. So we'll know like kind of what it feels like to be one of these small market clubs that has the extra pick. The big deal is that it's probably like $1.2 million in bonus pool space. Their first rounder at 5th overall should be well over $7 million. Just to keep this as brief as possible, like I don't think it's a great draft class. I think it's probably going to end up being like most of those teams at the top are going to try to go under slot, I would think. So it just opens up possibilities for you with the 43rd pick or the 69th pick to land a $3 or $4 million player, which is like a top 20 to 25 player in the draft class. So you should be able to get multiple guys. It's pretty valuable. So yeah, I mean, it's not, the big thing to remember is it's not just about the player taken with the nice pick at number 69. It's the bonus pool space that comes with it. And I do like how Chris Getz talked about it on his media call and recognized the fact that, hey, you can do this, and it's kind of cool that you can do it. And it's a nice sweetener, like in a trade package.
Yeah, agreed. So Gregory Santos shipped out. There is a lot of outrage about the amount of control that he had and the return on the package from the Mariners. How do you feel about the value amount that they got back for Santos?
So I think when I first saw it, like, look, I'm a geek, right? So like I was excited about the draft pick right away. I didn't know much about Prelander Berroa, but I just assumed that he was a pretty big time pitching prospect because like the return seemed a little light, I guess, for for 5 years of Gregory Santos essentially, and then Zach DeLoach, who like I had known of out of Texas A&M, but look, I didn't follow him in the PCL. I didn't know, like the power surge that had occurred and what he'd kind of turned into, right? So I think it's an okay deal. I don't think there's like a bunch more out there for Gregory Santos, or I think they would have pulled the trigger on it. Like, I love how people kind of like, oh, they should have got more. Well, I mean, they clearly didn't have more offered, and this was enough for them. Hat tip to Chirizi. I know Beef Loaf is listening. His tweet's the first one I saw that referenced Brian Bannister. Literally traded this dude in Boston, in San Francisco, and now in Chicago. So apparently it's not just Keenan Middleton who took offense to Gregory Santos sleeping in the bullpen during baseball games. So I don't know. I don't know what it is, but they felt that he was expendable for whatever reason. And look, I'm always a fan of trading relievers. Trade them early because they're so volatile, as Chris Getz also noted on the conference call. Like, I agree with that, and so I'm good with it. I mean, we'll get into Berroa. I think there's a non-zero chance that Prelander Berroa is like as good as Gregory Santos at some point pretty soon, right? And then you add the outfielder and the draft pick to it. So look, if people don't think it's enough, I totally understand the criticism, but I think it's probably fine ultimately.
Yeah. For those of you who are not watching us on the stream and are watching in podcast form, you can go back and watch this on this stream on YouTube. Right currently, there is video of Prelander Berroa on the screen, and it's showing, essentially like what his stuff is. And he's mostly a slider and fastball guy. He does have a changeup, which does have some movement on it, and I think that will be one thing that they will be working on trying to improve on. He did make his major league debut this July, I believe, with the Mariners, and he did strike out. I think if I remember correct, it was Bo Bichette. He struck out. He did allow a run on a pass ball, but to be fair, I put that pass ball on Tom Murphy because he did an absolutely terrible job of going down to get it, which it will come up here in a minute here. He was signed originally as an international free agent by the Twins, and then he was shipped to the Giants, which is where we get our Brian Bannister connection. And it's been a theme here is that a lot of these guys that are getting picked up are Brian Bannister guys. I would say that probably the first thing that they're going to be working on him with is working on his mechanics to keep them consistent and repeatable. Other than that, do you have any thoughts on what you've seen out of the video and reviews of him from other places?
Well, so I think it's interesting that he really broke out as a starter like in Seattle. Okay, so they made some changes to him and he really popped there. So he started in 2022 and he was really good, even with like no third pitch. Like, it's a pretty bad changeup. And then they moved him to relief this year and he was like even better. So he's got a plus fastball and a plus slider, which you've kind of talked about. I think there was some speculation yesterday I saw from some Seattle bloggers that maybe the White Sox would convert him back to the rotation. Chris Getz said, they see him as a reliever, similar track record to Santos, upper 90s, upper 90s, touches 100. So look, they think he's a reliever, a potential high leverage one, and probably soon. So that's what this is. I mean, two pitch reliever. The biggest thing with him is just like command and control. He throws really hard, but it's a lot of walks. The numbers are pretty eye popping though. It's 101 strikeouts in like 60 some innings, which I mean is absurd. But you can't walk people. So we'll see what they're able to do with him. I don't know that he necessarily starts with the White Sox, but I think we definitely see him at some point and probably pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't think that you have the movement that he's got on his slider. which is more of a downward movement as opposed to the plane that a lot of people have gotten used to seeing, which is the down and away, running glove side for these guys. It's more, it looks kind of almost like a sinker. But I don't think that with for a 5'11" guy, the amount of torque that this guy generates to be able to hit 102 miles an hour is, pretty insane. But like you did mention, and as you can see here on the video, part of the issue with him is that just the consistency with it, and he walks way too many guys. So that's obviously an issue. So the other player picked up in that deal, Zach DeLoach. He is a 6 foot, 200-pound outfielder. Played mostly right field for the Rainiers of the PCL. And in 2023, he slashed 286, 387, 481. I believe, if I remember correctly, he was 11th in OPS in the PCL, which is a pretty big deal considering some of the prospects that are there right now. Just go ahead and bring up the video on him and show him squib one for an infield hit here real quick. But how do you see him fitting into the White Sox organization? You see him starting in AAA this year?
Yeah, I think probably. But I mean, look, I think, like with Benintendi kind of locked in left field, like I think so. I think he's in Charlotte and he should mash there too. I mean, it's like I had a lot of people tell me that it's Pacific Coast League success, right? So you always have to kind of be careful with it. I remember, when the White Sox traded for Matt Davidson, and it was like, oh my God, look at this guy's numbers. And then he just kind of flopped or whatever, because like everybody hits in the PCL. But I mean, like there are a lot of good prospects there because there's good farm systems that play there. And look, I don't really think Truist Field or like in Charlotte, I don't think it's much different. I mean, we have to kind of couch Charlotte numbers too. It's very similar because the places are launching pads. So, one thing I'll say about DeLoach, it's too many strikeouts for him too, but he does walk. He's shown that he can control the strike zone, and he's definitely changed the approach to be more power oriented. So like, look, I'm good with high strikeout rates if you're walking and hitting for power. I think that's been pretty well established. I think he's made himself a big leaguer. He's hit 50 some minor league homers. So I think this is an interesting one. There are some of the scouting reports from Baseball America and other places think he's probably ultimately left field only because of a below average arm. Chris Getz said both corners. So, we'll see. He did have a 900 OPS against lefties this year, but I don't really think you want him facing lefties exclusively in the big leagues, which is what it would be like if he were up, I feel like, in a, the short side of a platoon from that side of the plate, which would be kind of weird. So yeah, I would imagine he's in Charlotte, but he's probably the first guy up.
Yeah, the thing I look at, and the thing that I saw the most is people complaining about the strikeout numbers for him and making fun of the fact that, yes, he did have 173 strikeouts in AAA, which is, obviously nothing to sneeze at. That is a lot of strikeouts. But the thing is that he was also, I think he was second in hits in the PCL and, 11th in OPS. And, his on-base percentage was not bad at all, So I don't know. I think that personally, I don't mind the pickup at all. I think that this is, he's obviously going to be blocked in Seattle, and he's not going to be getting anywhere near the starting, outfield for the Mariners because, look, I mean, just look at who they have in the outfield, and I mean, it's fairly certain that there's just no way he's going to crack that lineup. So,
no, and one thing I'd be interested in is to see the amount of strikeouts where he was like caught looking, because like even in like some of the scouting reports too, it says that he doesn't chase like that often, which I mean, you would assume that he does with 173 Ks in AAA, right? So I wonder how much of it is truly like he's sitting back forever, wanting to walk, not being afraid to K, like to improve his power, right? Like how much of it is like he just takes close pitches and strikes out quite a bit. It might sound like excuse making or whatever, but I'd just be curious to know like what that looks like. Like, is he swinging through fastballs? Like, is he, is it a lot of called strikes? I don't know. I could probably do that research, but I'm sure we'll we'll hear about it. So
yeah, I would have to look. I probably watched like, I don't know, maybe 10 games of at bats ish around there. And the things that I saw, the stuff that he was having issues with was, there was some chase on higher breaking balls that he wasn't able to make contact with. There wasn't a whole lot of, standing around and watching, so I don't know. We'll see, obviously I'll have to see him for longer than just, a quick like 35 at bats or whatever it was that I watched. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and he does have power. Like I had kind of heard yesterday, like people were underwhelmed like by like a corner profile, of like another like all defensive guy that Getz has been prone to get, right? But he doesn't really seem like that type of guy. I mean, he seems like he could even potentially sell out more and be, like one of these all or nothing guys that's hitting 210 and selling out for power. So we'll see kind of what he turns into.
Yeah, I think he's got the bat to ball to be able to do that. To be that true three outcome guy. And his eyes seems to be fairly decent. I think he had like almost 80 walks last year to go with the 170 strikeouts. So I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be, if nothing else, at least right field between one of these guys is going to be hopefully taken care of. Let's move on to the second deal that was made yesterday. And the White Sox sent starting pitcher Elijah Evans' favorite person, Cristian Mena, to the Diamondbacks for outfielder Dom Fletcher. Now, here's the thing. Beefloaf's going to love him because he's 5'6". There's going to be some bullying going on there. But 26-year-old outfielder, so he's a little bit up there in age. He was a 2019 Comp B pick, the 75th pick in the draft. What do you have to say about Dominic Fletcher?
So again, like I kind of like this guy. Like I was like a lot of underwhelmed White Sox fans yesterday, and I don't know, like I was a little bit surprised, right? Because I'm like one of the members of the Cristian Mena fan club. Like I remember on this podcast, like Ben Badler coming on, telling me and Mike Rankin that he's a sleeper, signed for $250K, quickly moved out of the complex and was awesome in A-ball, like striking out guys with his curveball. But you know what? Like the fastball just never really developed. And like, is that a White Sox problem? Maybe. Does he go to the Diamondbacks and he's throwing 97 and we regret this thing forever? Maybe. But I mean, the fastball's been pretty consistently like 92, topping out at 94. I think you've watched his actual games a lot more than I have, so feel free to chime in a second. But this is like Cristian Mena might be a number 4 starter and soon, right? So yeah, like you're getting rid of a guy that's probably going to pitch in the big leagues. And he's probably going to pitch in the big leagues this year, but it is for a need. And Dominic Fletcher's, also has 6 years of contract control. Is it a great fit in right field when Andrew Benintendi's your left fielder? I understand that argument. Like, you want more power out of right field, but I don't think he's small, but I don't think he's one of these tiny slap and dash guys. He just that's not how he plays. And obviously, like we just had the Pacific Coast League discussion, but he's got 42 minor league homers. Like this isn't Nick Madrigal, and I've seen some comps. I kind of like Cole Calhoun is who he kind of reminds me of a little bit. A guy like that, or like a Josh Reddick. Look, the defense is going to be plus in right field. Chris Getz was asked a question from, I think, James Fegan on the conference call just about and it was a good question. It was about targeting guys who a lot of their value is in center field when you already have a superstar in center field. Does that kind of take away? And Getz basically said no, because, if something happens and you have a center fielder, right? So I understand the question for sure though. But I think White Sox fans are going to like the guy because he's really fun, man. And he came up in a small sample and he helped a Diamondbacks team that went to the World Series. So I know you like him too, and you've seen a lot of his games. I understand hoping that it was somebody other than Mena that went. I get that part of it, but I do think this guy's going to help. They've needed outfield help for a long time, and he hits from the left side, and he's always mashed right-handed pitching.
Yeah, I had mentioned yesterday that I watched him when he was with the Cougars here, in Geneva, right down the street from my house. And he was always one of those fan favorite type guys. The guy could hit the ball, he could impact the ball. More importantly, it wasn't just like a guy just slapping the ball to the corner. This is a guy who would put a hurt on the ball, and that's obviously something that everybody was worried about, thinking because he's 5'6" that he's not going to impact the baseball, but he does. And I've also seen a bunch of criticism of him having like a noodle arm, and that's not true. That's also not true. Guy's a plus outfielder. He goes and gets the ball. He can play center. He can play right. He can play left. He can play anywhere out in the outfield, and he's a plus defender. Also, the Josh Barfield connection, he's, going to be a plus personality guy for the clubhouse. I mean, say what you want about that, but, they're trying to reestablish the culture here with the White Sox, and it seems like that's basically what they've been picking up, and that might be the entire reason that, Santos was gone. So, I mean, I like the deal personally. I'm sad to see Cristian Mena go. I really enjoyed watching him pitch, but the thing that I ran into was, like you said, the fastball is an issue, especially as he starts getting up into higher levels, where guys have no problem catching up with 92, 93 up in the zone. That's a problem. And the curveball's fantastic, yeah, but if the changeup doesn't come along a lot, it's going to be even more of an issue as he moves up into AAA and into major leagues.
So what do you think about this then from the Diamondbacks end? Like, I know that, look, they have a loaded outfield with like a lot of similar type guys, right? But why? Like, do you think this makes sense for them? Like, can they not do somebody, I guess, that's more of a sure thing than Cristian Mena? I guess, like, I'm a little bit surprised that this was the return, unless they really like him and, we're just kind of wrong and he's going to help them quite a bit. I wonder how long they haggled over this one, or if this was like an easy decision. Bannister kind of decided he liked some of the other similar guys better, or if this was a tough one for them. I don't really know. It's been kind of tough for me to figure out.
Yeah, see, I think kind of the thing here is that they like Dom Fletcher, they like Cristian Mena, and the White Sox like Dom Fletcher and also like Cristian Mena. And I think it was just kind of one of those things where they're like, the White Sox know that they've got, I know that he's younger and he has ascended up to AAA fairly quickly. The thing that I wonder, though, is do they feel that Cristian Mena moved up to AAA just simply because there wasn't anybody standing in his way to keep him from coming up? Do they feel like he earned it? Do they feel like he is, if he's in AAA this year, is he going to be a guy that they're going to want to bring up to the major leagues this season if they need, is he next up? And I would have to say, having watched him, I don't think that he's ready for that yet. I think he needs some more time to marinate in the minor leagues, and I think that the Diamondbacks can give him that.
Yeah, and I wonder if not that they sold high, right? Because I think he's going to pitch in the big leagues, but I do not think Charlotte was going to be kind to him. And I think there's other guys that are similar too, that do you want to get out in front of this thing, right? I think if Jake Eater's stuff is back, right? I think he'll be fine there. I think Nick Nastrini will be fine there. Jonathan Cannon's a guy that I worry about there. Jonathan Cannon's a guy who, if he's pretty good for the Barons, I'd consider hiking him to the big leagues and not even throwing very much in Charlotte, So I wonder if part of this calculus, and Getz mentioned a little bit how, and he didn't want to say that they built a surplus because, look, it's not like they have aces sitting around, right? But I do think they have a lot of back-end starting pitching prospect depth where they like a lot of guys, and you got to give to get. And, they found Cristian Mena expendable, and maybe it's because they think Nick Nastrini and Jake Eater and Jonathan Cannon and, the guys behind them are going to help them a little bit more or a little bit quicker. And they just, they felt like this was good. Or it really stings and they just, they wanted Dominic Fletcher really bad. I think we'll find out, because I do think both of these players are going to be in the big leagues probably by midseason.
Yeah, I think the important thing for them was after, going back to that Cease trade, the thing that I wonder is that when that trade was made for Burns, if they felt that they weren't going to get the outfielder that they wanted from the Orioles, that they just decided to move on and make these trades and try and at least bolster the outfield a little bit, even if it's not the kind of, ceiling talent that they're looking for.
Yeah, and that's, bringing me back to that, like we talked about Cease a little bit earlier. I feel like if a Cease trade happens now, it's going to be pitching heavy. And I wasn't sure that it was going to be if it was earlier in the offseason. Maybe it's like a close to the majors pitcher and prospects, right? But I'm not as sure that it'll be like a close to the big leagues guy. Because I was thinking, if it was Baltimore, I thought that's where your right fielder was coming from. But now they might make a different type of deal. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. And, at the deadline, like if it were at the deadline, you just take as much talent as you can get, right? Like wherever. So, but I do think it opens up the Yankees potentially, because they have pitching to offer.
They do have a couple of guys in their, in their top 10 that I do like that are pitchers. And ultimately, personally, I would like to, I know there's no shot that they do this, that, Dominguez, there's no way they're going to get rid of that guy. But the thing is that, he's hit or miss too. You can see him sometimes where he looks good, and you can see him other times for, the same stretch where he could just kind of disappear. And,
yeah.
But at least the Martian would be interesting. So I wanted to move past these deals here. I think we've exhausted about what we've got on those so far. And I wanted to move along to a couple of the guys that we haven't really, one got signed this past week, and the other one is the guy who we talked about earlier, which was Alex Speas. So I'm going to go ahead and move us back to the video here, and bring up some Juan Then video here. And obviously, if you look, it is pouring rain out there, so obviously not the best conditions. But I just pulled something really quick just so we could talk about him. We saw him with the Mariners last year. That's who we poached him from. 6'1", 26-year-old international free agent in 2016. He was traded to the Yankees, brought back to the Mariners a little bit later. He is a sinker and slider guy. I think he throws about 47% sinkers and like 30% sliders. And the change in the fastball are big secondary, like in the way back. The one thing about him is, I haven't seen anywhere in the minors, and he made it all the way up to, Major League Baseball with the Mariners. And I have not seen anything out of Juan Then that makes me think this was a guy that they should grab. But seeing that they're dealing guys out of the bullpen, I'm assuming that that's probably why they picked him up. Any ideas? I think probably the sinker, the fact that he's a sinker-type pitcher, and they just got rid of Declan Cronin, and he was another sinker guy, so they probably want to get that pitch profile back into the bullpen, but that's about all I can see out of it.
Yeah, and you just add him to the pile of guys. I feel like we talked about their non-roster invites, and they haven't been announced yet. I think they've kind of trickled out, like individually. They have quite a few bullpen arms on there, and some of those guys are going to be on this baseball team. I don't know that Juan Then necessarily will be, but we'll see, right? It's always like a battle in spring training, and worst case scenario, he's going to be in Charlotte, and it probably is a worst case scenario for him because that place is brutal. But at least he's a sinker baller.
Yeah. That's true. Hopefully you can get some ground balls out of that, but again, we'll see. So moving along. So the guy that we had ready to cut off for dead off the 40-man roster, Alex Speas. Now, I've gone back, he was like just a kind of like, oh, where'd this guy come from for me months ago. And I just went and looked through, like what his deal is, and he's fairly interesting.
He throws absolute fire, and I had no idea.
102 miles an hour. I'm going to show some video here. In this game here, in his major league debut for the Rangers last year, I believe he hit 100 during that game. This particular initial one that I'm showing here is the Rough Riders against the Rainiers, I think that's what it is. And it's Alex Speas. And the funny thing here is the way that I found this was Zach DeLoach is on the Rainiers. And so I was like, oh, that's Alex Speas throwing to Zach DeLoach. And Speas does end up winning that battle, gets DeLoach to pop to left field. But so he was a second-round pick by the Rangers in 2016. He ended up having Tommy John in 2018. And so he was out for like the back half of 2018 and then spent all of 2019 rehabbing. And then he lost all of 2020 with the lockdown and the baseball season going away. And so he came back in 21, and then he decided to take 2022 off and just disappeared. He comes back in 2023 and adds a cutter, and now he looks pretty stinking good, especially with that velocity. I mean, he has elite velo. He's 6'3", and 26 years old, I think. So this is something to watch out for, especially with people worried about Gregory Santos disappearing. It looks like we might have, between him and Prelander Berroa, we might have two guys that might be able to take over at least somewhat in that type of role. I'm not saying that they're going to get 100th percentile, barrel rates, but there might be somebody that is at least worth putting out on the mound.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, I mean, look, he was a second-round pick out of high school, right, I believe?
Yep.
So I'm sure, there was, like, starter upside at one point, but, now it's pretty much just throwing fire out of the bullpen. And, look, he's going to get an opportunity with this White Sox team, obviously. This is a guy that I'd keep an eye on, just as far as, like, an opening day bullpen spot, because when your stuff is this good, you have a chance. I will say, I don't know if Beef Loaf is still listening. I hope that he's good enough that next year in the 108 mock trades, they have Brian Bannister trading this guy for 3 prospects next offseason. Like, so that would be a wonderful path for Alex Speas. This was kind of quiet. Do you have the claim date on this? It just seems like Texas is so good. They kind of ran out of 40-man space and let him go. I feel like it was early. It was like November when, or maybe even earlier than that. So, yeah, and the White Sox quietly put a claim in, and he was on the 40.
Yeah, I want to say that it was in September or October.
Okay, yeah, so even earlier.
I think it was. Beefus says he's still listeing. Yeah, so okay. The thing here is this is his major league debut, and as you just saw right there, I'll go ahead and rewind that right quick. The first batter that he faced in his pro debut was Wander Franco. Struck him out. Struck out Yandy Diaz. And then you've got this pitch coming up here. The next pitch, I believe, against Randy Arozarena, where he just fools him so bad that he throws his bat down the third base line. There is clearly something here with him, and the fact that he got brought up says that there is something to look into. That right there was a 5-out save, or it was 1 point. Yeah, maybe it was just 1 2/3 innings, but no hits, no walks, just throwing gas out of the pen. Looked great. So
yeah, and it's so these are the type of moves that the Giants have been making, quite frankly, for the last 3 to 4 years. And look, I know we keep going back to Brian Bannister, right? And I know that Chris Getz was not our choice. He wasn't really anyone's choice, and I understand that. Like, and I've also tried to point out that that doesn't mean that he's going to be terrible at this job. I know we're not allowed to say nice things, right? But like the Brian Bannister hire was big, and I kind of like what I've seen and heard from Josh Barfield. Other than that, I don't really know. But, you know, those are two guys from outside the org that I trust that are in the general manager's ear. So, you know, the pitching decisions have been interesting, and I think it's just something to monitor going forward. I don't think anything happens without that guy's approval at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to get into this just briefly here before we call it a night. The amount of roster churn that has happened in such a short time. I think we were talking about this yesterday. Something like 18 spots on the 40-man have been turned over. This gives me optimism that at least something different is being done than what was being done. I don't know whether it's going to be successful, but I'm definitely here to see that there is some changes. How do you feel about the current roster?
The same. I mean, like look, like it's not a good baseball team, but I think we've said for years, like guys, they never churned out the bottom of the 40-man roster, like ever. And it was even like a criticism of mine, like during the rebuild, like they were supposedly rebuilding and they're not even taking chances on anybody. It was just, their same bad minor league guys that they just played. And look, it wasn't the end of the world. Like they were losing on purpose, but like you'd still kind of like to find some guys. And this is what you should be doing. You think a guy's interesting? Claim him. Great. And then if ultimately you have to DFA him later because you like somebody better, fine. But you should be doing this stuff all the time. Now, we're getting to the point where Lenin Sosa, Jose Rodriguez, guys that people have heard of that we kind of like a little bit. Like, I mean, they're on the 40 bubble here pretty soon because there's some guys that, you're just not going to be willing to get rid of. But look, I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. If you look ahead to next year, like depending on what happens with some of the veterans, Yohan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, the team could look even more different than this. I mean, you could be up to 25 or 30 new names just pretty quickly with like a $40 million committed, I think, next year without any additional moves. So Chris Getz said that he didn't like the team very much. I think he was being honest. I don't think his owner's letting him spend very much money, and we'll talk more on the podcast just about his strategy to fix the defense because it's probably the cheapest thing to fix, right? But I think there's been a lot of positives so far, even if it doesn't end in like a great big league season.
Yeah. It's kind of like Major League where, they can go into any restaurant with their American Express card and nobody realizes who they are, and I think it's going to be like that for, at least for the foreseeable future, minus a couple of the bigger guys.
But that's even like their biggest free agent signing in franchise history. Could walk the streets of Chicago and nobody would have any idea.
Yeah, like especially seeing
you saw Andrew. For sure. When you saw him like at the Boys and Girls Club or whatever, and he's just like this tiny person, you're like, oh my goodness, like it's I don't think many people could pick Andrew Benintendi out like if they saw him like walking down Lake Michigan.
Or, he could walk down the concourse
Michigan Avenue
during the game, and nobody would have any idea who he was
with his jersey on. Like,
oh, that guy kind of looks like him. Anywho, so. You got anything else for this week? Are you good?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. Well, like, what do you think of? I guess I do have one more thing. Robert Murray. I don't know if he's doing the agent a favor. Dominic Smith. Did you see that? White Sox are one of the. Does that make any sense?
Not to me.
Is that a minor league deal? Like, you know who doesn't want to see Dominic Smith on this team? Gavin Sheets.
Gavin Sheets. Yeah.
Yeah, he does not want that to happen. So,
yeah, no. The first time I saw that, I was like, okay, but why? Like, I just don't understand. Yeah, I mean, it's like, haven't we had this same guy on the roster for the last 6 years and tried to get rid of most of them? And it just
Well,
doesn't make sense.
at least he hits left-handed, right? But that's the only thing. So, yeah. But look, if it's a minor league deal, I don't think there's any bad minor league deals. But yeah, like a big league deal wouldn't really make any sense. So
yeah, NRI, sure, perfect. Like that works out. And if he ends up making Gavin Sheets look terrible, great. But I mean, realistically, they are the exact same player, except for maybe Dom Smith has a little bit more power. At this point in his career, like 5 years earlier, sure, but now. I don't really see any difference pretty much whatsoever. Both of them are not great defenders. Both of them are bad in the outfield. Both of them are left-handed, and both of them are going to probably end up hitting like 230,
Yeah.
So
what you're saying is they're definitely going to sign him.
Probably, I at least, they said that they were going to make people work for their roster spots. So maybe that is, even if the guy coming in looks like the exact same player, just to have like some movement there. And if they can gain a little bit of expertise, a little bit of experience, a decent clubhouse guy, if he is one, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Dom Smith other than, looking at his baseball card and Baseball Savant. So
yeah.
Yeah,
and obviously, look, like we're running a little bit long, but it's our show, and I don't really care. Just, I guess, one more thing before we go. Like that, there's been a lot of reports just about how the floodgates are probably going to open this week a little bit with some of these position players and just some of the guys that aren't signed. I don't think that includes the Boris people, but all your other guys, your Jorge Solers and Tim Andersons, and look, when you look at the free agent list, like there's a lot of useful players that are still available. So I do think we see a lot of action this week. Does anything else really make sense to you for the Whites? Do they need to add somewhere? Is it you just sit back and see if something comes to you? I don't even know what the spot would be. Maybe infield pushing Nicky Lopez to the bench, but other than that, I don't really know what makes sense other than more pitching maybe. But that seems to be kind of set right now too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that they've been slowly picking people up this entire time, and it hasn't been anything that's been, really anything to write home about. It's been a bunch of guys that are making like very, very small contractual amounts of money or, minor league deals, and you can cut them loose. I don't know. It was like when things kind of started up with that whole Aaron Bummer trade right off the bat. It was like it started filling up some of the needs that this team has had for a long time. The unfortunate thing is that all the guys that were supposed to be ahead of them in the pecking order are gone or not any good. So that, that kind of like, yes, they need a lot, but are they going to go out and spend any money on any of these guys? Or do they feel like any of them are worthy of spending a lot of money on? I don't know. And short of the Boris clients, is there somebody out there that's really going to improve the team a whole lot? I mean, I guess Jorge Soler sort of would, but the thing is that, if you can't get rid of Eloy,
right,
you've got two Eloys because neither one of them can play the outfield fairly well. Yeah. And, one of them has hit 40 home runs, I guess, which is something that the other guy is not. But I mean, if you can't get rid of Eloy, you got to wait until the end of the year unless you feel like keeping Jorge Soler for a longer period of time is worth it, which I just don't.
I totally agree with that. Like if they had traded Eloy somewhere for two prospects or whatever, I'd be totally on board upgrading and you'd do the Jorge Soler thing. But right now, it's just there's just not space and they're not going to be good anyway. So maybe we might not see very much else happen other than, if they make more trades.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think that if they're doing anything at this point, it's just going to make things incrementally better, I guess, is the way I would put it. It's not anything that's really going to change what this team is, and I feel like they need to cut the dead weight after the end of the year, whether that, it's probably going to be Yohan and Eloy are probably both going to be on their way out if they don't have, MVP caliber seasons. So At this point, I'd say I wouldn't really expect a whole lot from the White Sox unless they manage to trade one of those guys out of here. That's the only way that I see anything major for the White Sox is if they get rid of Cease, Eloy, or Yoan. And that's pretty much or Benintendi for that fact. You know, I had mentioned that yesterday that I don't see anything happening in the outfield with those two guys that they got yesterday. You're going to have one or the other. You're not going to be able to get the other one up there unless Benintendi's gone. And he's, scheduled to make another $60 million. So, we'll see, but I doubt it.
Yep, I doubt it too. I think this is probably pretty close to the team. So, and then we'll start talking about some of the prospects that'll get an opportunity in spring training, and if they can force any of these guys out of there, and we'll kind of go from there.
I agree. All right, so FutureSox.net, you can find an article that will be popping out by James Fox here on the other side tomorrow. I believe it's coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be out Monday, and then I'm gonna do a mock draft this week too, and then we have the other minor league pod and a big league version later on this week as well.
Yes, we do. You can find all of the written content over there. You can find our link to Patreon if you feel like being nice enough to help us do the work that we do here. You can find at FutureSox on Twitter. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox on Twitter. James Fox at JamesFox917 on the other side. You can find this on YouTube in podcast, audio-only form or video form. You can also find this in our Twitch video section on twitch.tv/FutureSox. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. You guys have a great week. We will see you guys next week at 8 p.m. on Sunday. Thank you so much. Have a great night.